You are listening to the Mount Rushmore podcast, the special Halloween episode. It is splendid to have you here. I would like to introduce the ghoulish Michael Winfield.
Howdy.
And the macabre Richard Manfredi. Guys, it's our special Halloween issue episode, which we're recording adjacent to a cemetery.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That's cool.
A spooktacular cemetery, as is every other episode of the Mount Rushmore podcast, because we are very close within creeping distance of the Pierce Brothers Valhalla Cemetery.
I could throw a rock outside. No, well, you've seen me throw Richard. I could not throw it. But someone could throw a rock from where I'm sitting through the garage door, right over the fence, into the cemetery.
Yes, you throw like a ghoul. That's so funny. That's so funny. And you'd hit something.
I gotta write that
something
down.
Creepy. But this is the Mount Rushmore Halloween Spooktacular episode where we are discussing the Mount Rushmore of Death.
Okay. Non-personal.
Not personal.
This is, whenever we have a Halloween episode or a Christmas episode, I try to, kind of zoom in on something. We did comedic Draculas last year, and we did, I can't remember what we did for our first Halloween one. Regardless.
So the candy. No, it wasn't. No, that wasn't.
Yeah, who knows? I could pull it up, but I'm not going to.
Good.
I'll do it by the end of the episode. And death is one of these things that, is ever present in our lives. And we know about it as humans. We know that death will come for all of us.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone has known that death will come for them as long as kind of man has walked on two legs and had a concept of their own mortality. But sometimes death is very funny as it's portrayed. Sometimes there are just haunting images of death that has existed throughout history. The Grim Reaper and the Angel of Death and with the scythe and all of that. And I find just the image of death very interesting because he is us, just stripped away to nothingness, or she or whatever it is.
Yeah.
A pronounless creature.
Yes.
But then I thought, well, what if it's not just, images of death? What if it's just death in general? What does Richard think would be on the Mount Rushmore of death? What does Jeff think? What is this kind of constant thing in our lives that could be tragic, could be funny, could be whatever? Most of mine are kind of funny or scary and pop culture-y as kind of our show is. I don't think I have a whole lot of tragedy in my choices, even though I probably should. Come to think of it, maybe rewrite as we go along. But I don't know. I think death is a very interesting topic, and I think death as a character is an interesting character. I like the idea that man has decided to
personify.
Like, it can't just be this ubiquitous blackness. It is some guy that you can walk into in a Kmart and buy a picture of or buy a costume of or whatever, or it's on a greeting card for when you turn 50. And it's like, happy birthday, you're dying. And everyone's like, I guess so.
You're not right. Yeah. Okay, Michael chose it. Richard starts.
All right, so my first choice is the 1978 film Heaven Can Wait.
All right.
Not the original version or the which I've never seen.
Yeah.
So I will not be talking about that.
Okay.
Even though on the show, not having seen something is certainly not a prerequisite for talking or not talking about it.
Damn sure.
But
Naked Women, what do you think? I don't know.
I hear they're great. This was a movie I do remember watching quite a bit on my local independent television station where it would come on. It was a favorite of my mom's. Great film.
Yeah.
But Warren Beatty plays Joe Pendleton, quarterback for the Los Angeles Rams, who is pulled out of his body by his guardian angel, played by Buck Henry, prematurely. He thinks he's about ready to get hit by a truck, so he pulls him out. The problem is it's not his time to die yet, but they can't put him back in his body because his body is now broken and mangled.
Yeah.
So they wind up putting him into the body of a rich industrialist who had just been murdered by his wife and her lover. then they're a little surprised to find out after he's been shot that he just kind of pops out of the bathtub and comes back to life. He winds up buying the Los Angeles Rams so that he can play quarterback for them. And has to.
That is a ballsy move.
You got a lot of money when you can do that just so you can play quarterback.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole complications with that. He winds up having to go into a separate body. He winds up changing bodies like 3 times. I loved this movie growing up. It's a great Warren Beatty flick. Yeah, he's Warren Beatty in his height of his 70s kind of charmingness.
Mm-hmm.
Julie Christie's fantastic in it. Buck Henry. It's got Buck Henry in it. Go see
Yeah.
it. And I chose this because there's a lot of... I think the idea of the pearly gates and St. Peter and all of that is very ubiquitous within pop culture. This idea that when we die, there's a judgment day that comes. There's this reckoning that's going to happen, and whatever happens to you, happens to you. I like this movie because it kind of says, well, maybe this is kind of a bureaucracy, and maybe people screw up.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it's Buck Henry that screws up and pulls him out. And how do you fix this problem? And it just causes more and more complications.
Yeah.
I love bureaucracy in heaven, like the
Albert Brooks.
Yeah.
film? Yeah.
Oh, defending my life.
Defending Your Life.
Yeah.
Where that's another. Thank you.
Yeah.
Where that's another film where it's just like you go to heaven, you're just
like a small claims court. You have to
just kind of
yourself.
You're stuck there in that limbo or whatever it is.
And the multiple layers of institutions. The deceased Albert Brooks ends up in kind of like the Scottsdale, Arizona of of heavens, where Meryl Streep is kind of adjacent in the Beverly Hills of heaven.
But in Heaven Can Wait, I like that idea too of well, we screwed up and you're going back.
Yeah.
Well, we can't put you back where you were, so we're going to try to.
God is all powerful,
fix the
but
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's part of it. Is I love the idea that in theory God can fix everything, but obviously he can't. So they
just won't, jerk.
Or probably won't. That seems more likely.
Yeah. Yeah. It does seem like there is a layered, leveled bureaucracy within heaven, and it is an institution that has the all-powerful and all-knowing at the top, but then levels of ineptitude that are beneath it. And Buck Henry's kind of represented by that. And I think Beatty, as a big oaf, is somebody that he's played a few times, like in Ishtar.
Right.
But a lot of times he plays these characters, or like even in, I would say, Bonnie and Clyde. But he has a lot of things like in Reds or Bulworth. He's got a little bit of more education and intellectual prowess than the people around him. And so he leads really with his heart in that film.
Yeah, kind of like Shampoo.
Yeah.
In the same way. I think it's that the characters are not similar, but I think the type of persona that he's projecting is very similar.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. Or is it Grodin and Diane Cannon are the people, or the couple that are fooling around? I think Grodin is his wife or something like that?
Yeah. It's Diane Cannon and Charles Grodin.
Yeah. I love that in that. So who's death in this one?
There is not. There's
not a personification.
There's not a personification of it. It's just this idea of what happens when you die and you're not supposed to die.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone. You get this idea that probably there are a lot of in this world. There would be a lot of people going up to the pearly gates and arguing that it's not their time.
Yeah.
What happens if this is the one time when, whoops, he's actually right?
Yeah.
And it suddenly turns into like a big trying to return something at Target.
Yeah.
Support you're trying to return your body.
What I love about this is, there's films that are about death are obviously for the living and giving people this statement of optimism for the healing and recovery that you need to do to encounter that. And in the end, doesn't he have a message too? Is it to Julie Christie? Or
it's basically the message is because he kind of has this sense that he may not be in Leo Farnsworth's body for very long.
Yeah.
So he says something to the effect of, look. When you see other strangers, look for something of me in them, or look for something of other people in them.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful optimism for those people dealing with loss, that you can find your soulmate, perhaps, or at least somebody else. You can move on from loss. So that's a commonality, perhaps, to all these things. Like these characters are really to kind of help us deal with living after this moment of tragedy. Upbeat. All right, Winfield.
Well, I'm going to start off silly, too, and I don't really have a representation of death in my first one either. And it is from the movie Hot Shots Part Deux.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
There was a moment when Charlie Sheen, who is playing Topper Harley, is decked out in, like, his full Rambo regalia in, like, the Thai jungle.
Yeah.
He's got, like, a chain machine gun that's just, like, loading
Yeah.
bullets. And he just starts mowing down this village of, insurgents or, general bad guys. And on the screen pops up, like, this video game thing that says, like, the kill count. And it starts just rolling. Like, he's just mowing people down, shooting people down, hundreds, thousands of bullets. At about 140, it says equal to RoboCop. At about 160, 165, equal to Total Recall. And then right around 300 says bloodiest movie ever. A few seconds later, he runs out of bullets in his machine gun, turns around, grabs a handful of, like, shell casings and throws them at people, and they all topple over and die. And I love this ridiculous, death and killing in movies is, especially in the 90s, was so gratuitous. And I don't know how many politicians would harangue and wring their hands over, oh, there's so much gratuitous violence in movies and it's ruining America.
Yeah.
And this is evil, and Hollywood's the reason why there's so much sin and degradation. And this movie just goes all in on making fun of, one, these action movies, but just the concept of all these people just dying and bodies on top of each other. And when I was thinking of this topic, I was thinking of what is the most like people I've ever seen killed in a movie in this way. And then it was this silly comedy action flick from the 90s. And this movie it could have been on our good dumb movies list. And I'm kind of kicking myself from last week or 2 weeks ago that we didn't have it 3 weeks ago. And it was just like, oh, this is just one of those really good, dumb Zucker brothers.
Is it better than Hot Shots?
Part Deux? Yes.
Yes, I think it's one of the rare sequels.
Yeah,
it's actually better than the original.
I think it's because of a scene like this where they really leaned into it. Where they really...
Right.
It was always silly, but there was, like, a really great gratuitous sex scene.
Yeah.
There was lightsaber fighting with a Saddam Hussein sort of character.
Right.
This was like right in the like Bart Simpson going after Saddam. Everybody could just take on Saddam.
Yeah.
And Topper Harley did as well, I think.
After Littleton, Colorado, there was questioning the appropriateness of any kind of depiction of guns and that kind of mass carnage on the screen.
Well, thank God we're past that.
Yeah, thank God we're past that.
And they lean into like the video game of itness and the like shooting gallery. There's guys that just start walking along with like targets on their chests and their butts and whatever. And it's just it's a silly depiction of like these everyone just kind of falls over and dies. You don't see like faces blown off or arms. It's not like quite like Rambo where it's just bloody and gory. It's just like so obviously silly.
Well, do you remember the scene where Rambo satire goes past Apocalypse Now satire, where Martin Sheen and Charlie Sheen pass each other?
Yeah, they're like, you were great in...
I loved you in Wall Street. But I think, they have Martin Sheen doing his inner voiceover monologue from Apocalypse Now, which is funny because I don't think of... Apocalypse Now was seen as a political indictment of the Vietnam War. And it wasn't played for laughs, but it was kind of ridiculous. There were characters like Colonel Kong or what's his head's character, Charlie Don't Surf. There was so much that was really funny and over the top about Apocalypse Now, but it certainly wasn't played as much for laughs as Hot Shots Part Deux.
Part Deux. This is also right in the pinnacle of sequels having to come up with a clever sequel name.
Oh, the sequel, yeah.
Hot Shots Part 2, Naked Gun 2.5.
Yeah.
They 33 and a third for the third one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that moment.
They went too far.
The Zucker thing. Well, even our name has to be hilarious. They won't know it's a comedy. Manfred.
All right, so my second choice is everyone's favorite rock song. Parentheses, Don't Fear. The Reaper. By Blue Oyster Cult. I think everyone knows it as the cowbell song from SNL.
Yeah.
From the 1976 album Agents of Fortune. And it was written by the lead guitarist as kind of a... I think he wrote it as this sort of idea of love being eternal.
Yeah.
And so what's the way that you sort of can express this is talking about don't worry about death. If you love somebody, you'll be with them even after death.
Yeah.
Boy, Richard really is optimistic today. This is lovely.
Isn't it? You got me right in my wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Death. It was a big hit for the band. This is one of those songs where it's really interesting to me because I think people have their own interpretations of it versus what the lead singer. I mean, I think people get a lot of people.
Suicide.
It's about suicide or it's about murder-suicide because the Romeo and Juliet reference that keeps getting played back in. But really, it's supposed to be a little bit more, like Michael said, maybe not optimistic, but at least trying to take like a different view of death. That it's not something you should be afraid of. It's going to happen to everybody.
Yeah. Do you recall hearing that song at an impressionable age, or did you come to it later?
Oh, I'm sure it was probably on like the classic rock station, which is one of the stations I listened to, and I'm sure I didn't really understand any of the nuances of it. It just kind of sounded, being as a kid, I'm sure it probably just sounded sort of somewhat morbid and therefore kind of cool.
Wasn't there a spooky wind in it?
Yeah, there's there's wind, there's chimes.
Yeah.
There's like little stuff going on in the background. It's in a minor key.
And it does have statistics. What is the statistic? Like 40,000 men and women every day?
Yeah, and they get it completely off. Yeah. It's like actually like 120,000 or something like that.
And is that death or suicide?
Death.
Oh, okay.
But,
yeah,
we really can't blame the guitarist of Blue Oyster Cult for not having the CDC statistics at hand.
When album-oriented rock is who you're counting on to solve the ills of the world, then we're in trouble. Your society is in a shambles. As a young person, I had that song in the back of a Camaro blasting and told to me to represent "Don't Fear the Reefer" because that's what it's really about. And if
your dad gets mad at you about not your dad, but a theoretical dad would get mad at you.
My dad was, "Hey, buy me some reefer while you're there at school today."
It's a really interesting song too because it's kind of got this dark subject matter. Yeah, the song's kind of dark, but like the vocals themselves are not dark. It's very almost kind of soft sort of vocal that kind of
multi-tracked harmonies and things like that.
So it's different.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Blue Oyster Cult, was that one of those bands that was kind of made up by rock critics? I remember, or is it Deep Purple? There was one of those bands,
Deep Purple.
Deep Purple, that was like basically all the rock nerds got together and made a band. So, Winfield.
The scariest version of death that I remember ever seeing on screen was in the 1988 movie The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Oh, wow. I've not seen that's Gilliam, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the Angel of Death, the Grim Reaper, as you just mentioned in the last pick, is this winged, scythe-carrying, skull-faced creature that stalks Baron Munchausen throughout the movie. And his character is one that is always kind of cheating death. Yeah. His character is a bit of a trickster. He's a liar. He's kind of like this storyteller, kind of Loki, Puck sort of mischievous guy who everything seems to go right for him. He talks his way out of every situation. And he even manages to kind of get around death. And like the 4 times that the death comes from in the movie, at the beginning, like the theater's being kind of shelled by cannon fire and this winged creature comes for him, and he's like fucking frightening. He looks like the very classic version of death that everyone that has existed since 2,000 years ago or 4,000 years ago, since Greek times. But it's just Terry Gilliam at his most macabre,
right?
And this creature has these huge wings, and he's just flying for him, and he's just so scary, but somehow he gets out of it every time. Either he's like chased away, or he's of course, he holds on to a cannonball, Baron Munchausen. He's flying through the sky, and Death is coming for him too, and Death gets blasted out of the air. But of course, Death is as relentless as anything. But I just like the idea or the commonality of cheating Death.
Yeah.
Of, like, that Death is a person that you can get away from, you can escape from somehow. Mm-hmm. And Richard kind of mentioned it also in like Heaven Can Wait, where like, you know, he kind of leaves Death behind and comes back a few times. And I think Baron Munchausen especially does that over and over in this movie.
Mm-hmm. It seems like Gilliam's career has been almost like followed by this scythe wielding figure, because he's had so many challenges. I think of like the Don Quixote.
Sure.
thing.
Oh yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, talk about a guy who is. I mean, he is like a force of will.
Yeah.
Gilliam. He just kind of wills these movies into happening, even though he's like one of those guys that feels like he's never really made a cent on any of his pictures.
Yeah.
He's been given, hundreds of millions of dollars in budget over and over, and tens of millions, and I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I bet if you looked at like the budget versus the box office, I bet
movies of his that probably made money.
Yeah.
Fisher King. 12 Monkeys.
12 Monkeys.
Maybe that's it. Maybe
Time Bandits.
Maybe Brothers. Yeah,
Yeah,
something like that was
probably
such a
had such a
small
low budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Connery.
Brothers
yeah.
Grimm maybe is one of those that like maybe it was like just had low enough. Maybe it was like a $30 million movie and made $31 million.
Right.
Like, but
Same
I
thing
don't.
with Fear and Loathing.
It's amazing that he has cheated his own directorial death, where other people aren't given the chance. Like if you make a flop, that's it. You're done. No one's going to give you money. But somehow he has so much like just built in, like, I don't know if just the
Goodwill,
Python,
yeah.
Goodwill, Monty Python, just like he's such a weirdo that he's just going to do his own thing. And you know what kind of movie he's going to make.
Right.
So you're betting on what you know.
Even when it's a flop, it's an interesting flop, which is at least I think why some people are willing to give him chance after chance.
It's me, old Tippecanoe. That's right, your buddy, William Henry Harrison. I thought I'd come by and see how this cast pod thing works out.
Nailed it.
Not so well so far, actually.
Happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me to your death episode. Ha ha ha, I get it. I was the shortest living president of history ever. So funny, I get it. That's why you asked me to come here.
Well, also, I always want to ask you a question.
Okay, ask away. I hope I can survive long enough to answer it before I die again.
Looking back on this, would you have worn a coat?
That would have been better than to just brave the chill to try to show off my manhood and masculinity on my inauguration. Yes, that would have been a good idea.
So let that be a warning to all you little kids out there. When mom and dad say wear a coat,
That's right.
do it, or else you might wind up dead like William Henry.
That's right. Okay, are we recording? Are we on wax? Okay.
Yes,
This will be a PSA. Hello, I'm President William Henry Harrison. Young people out there, in inclement weather, your body loses its heat fast. So I want to suggest...
Oh man,
sir.
Hey guys,
can
what's up?
ghosts die?
This is awkward,
Guys, why is it cold in this one
Jeff,
spot?
We have a dead ghost body, which, as Michael said, I don't even know is possible.
Dead ghost.
What do we do with
What
it?
is...
Like, we got to call.
This is just the synopsis for like the next Ghostbusters
Yeah.
movie. It's like, what do you have? We have a ghost. What happened to it? It died.
Died.
Oh no.
Do-do-do-do-do-do.
Okay, who's next? I was out of the room, so I don't know what even
I believe
happened.
we're at a halftime.
Yeah, we're at
Okay.
halftime.
This is our halftime, and we want to implore you, invite you, enthuse you to download, rate, and review past episodes. You can go to iTunes, of course. Then you can go to iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Boggle. Sorry, Life, Yahtzee. All
Trouble.
these. What's that?
Trouble.
Trouble. Any board game that they sell in the boring stack over at Target, you can go download and listen to our podcast too.
Who were the ad wizards that thought of starting the boring stack?
The boring why? That if you don't want to have any fun with your family, go buy these things. And then you can give us a rating and a review. We'd really appreciate that. And it's how we make money. Right, guys? The money's got to come in soon, right?
According to our creditors, yes.
Yes.
Otherwise, they're going to repo our microphones.
Yeah. Oh, my God. The lights. The lights are, well, they're still on. Okay. So then that would do us a solid. We appreciate it. And if you could also get in the dialogue with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and do us a favor of suggesting future episodes for this podcast. We really want to talk about the things that you think are interesting. So go ahead and suggest a topic. Past suggestors have been past guests on our podcast. You don't have to, but you certainly could if you wanted to, and we thought it would be a good idea too. And there's other things you can do. I can't think of them though. Hug your loved ones.
Post about us on social media. Let us know. Let people know that you like us.
Yes.
Give us a review. Anything else that we need?
It's a Halloween time, so
Give us candy.
Show us a picture of you getting dressed inside your costume.
But just you
Why?
getting your inside, yeah.
Yeah. So show us a photo. Send us a photo of you in the bathroom putting on your Halloween costume.
Can't imagine where this is going to go wrong at all.
No, this should be deleted.
Michael, I remembered what our first to try to desperately change topics.
No,
please
our
do.
first Halloween episode was with our buddy Ryan Love. It was the Halloween songs, or it was it spooky songs or something like that?
Oh yeah.
That was one of them we did. Yeah, for sure.
That was our first Halloween one. I'm pretty sure.
No, because he would have come in a few seasons in because we recorded.
Oh, I don't
No.
know. Then I don't know what the hell.
It
I'm
wasn't
talking about.
Monsters
But that was
Mash.
one. But that for sure was one of. I have season one.
Let's figure this out because you did tease.
I did tease that I was going to look it up, but then I didn't. So let's see.
Oh, is Matt Rusher of Tease?
Of teeth?
Tease.
Oh, I thought you said of teeth.
Darjeeling, am I right, people?
Pop culture devils / Satans.
Oh, there we
Oh,
go.
okay.
There you go.
Oh, that's fun.
So
We should do that one sometime.
Yeah.
We've
we
done
probably-
devils and Satans. We've done Halloween music. We've done
Comedic Draculas.
Comedic Draculas. Jeff Hopkins joint, and now death.
We did the stupid.
So go back and you know what? Just listen to all the past episodes of the Halloween episodes. You know what? Do us a favor. Just do that. Don't
Just do
listen
that.
to. Don't download. We just spent 4.5 minutes telling you to download, rate, and review. Just do the Halloween episodes.
There was an episode
That'd be
that
cool.
was mostly about candy corn, but that wasn't a Halloween
That was
episode.
just shitty candies.
Shitty candies. Okay.
Well, you can listen to that one too.
Yeah.
I'll make an exception for this week if you
Well-
want to listen to that one.
We'll make a playlist on Spotify. I wonder if we can even do that.
I think we can Spotify
A playlist of us.
of us. I don't know.
Nobody wants that. Okay, we're back for the second half.
Off the rails.
And this would be Richard's third.
All right, so I'm pulling an audible here because my next choice was going to be
You know what?
really.
I like that. I like that he made a halftime adjustment.
Yeah.
That he saw the competition, he saw what I was doing,
Oh.
and
Bringing a new
something
picture.
that we should look forward to in the new year. I think
Okay.
that's something that we should think about as treating this like a.
I talked to the coaches
Yep.
in the break. They saw some things up in the booth,
Okay.
so we decided to institute a new game plan.
This
Send
is
us a photo of
Richard in
you
front of a
getting
chalkboard,
Oh, yeah.
just yelling at the rest of at himself, really
Punching a chalkboard for no good reason.
spinning around and hits him in the face. Hilarious.
Comedy. Because my next choice was going to be a very dark choice, and I don't think anybody needs that.
Oh, okay.
Who wants to get dark when we're talking about death?
No.
Get the hell out of here. So instead, I'm going to go with Death from Bill and Ted's Bogus.
Lovely. Perfect.
Journey.
Coming back for the next movie.
I hope
the
so.
best.
Well, he is their best friend now. So this was obviously a play on the specter of death, the representation from Bergman's The Seventh
Yeah.
Seal, where Bill and Ted are killed, and they are greeted by death. And first they get away from him by giving him a wedgie,
Yeah.
which is great because that implies he has underwear, which is great. then they're caught by Death again, and Death gives them the opportunity to win their souls back if they're able to defeat him in any game of their choosing. But he's never lost. And I'm sure everyone knows everyone has seen the Seventh Seal, right?
Oh yeah,
you guys. I didn't include the Seventh Seal in one of my choices because I didn't want to have to lie about the fact that I'd watched the movie and act like that I had.
Regardless, chess is the worst thing to watch in a movie.
Yeah, so basically, Death plays against Max von Sydow's character a game of chess for his life.
Yeah.
So this is a play off of that, but of course, being Bill and Ted, instead of playing chess, he winds up playing like Battleship and Twister. All the modern, boring-ass section of target games.
Yeah.
One of the best line readings in history is "You sunk my bat," in his quasi-Eastern European accent that is unplaceable.
Yeah, William Sadler doing some sort of vaguely, like you said,
Swedish.
I will say
Swedish.
it is Czech because William Sadler, I just heard him interviewed on Multon on Movies and couldn't wait for him to talk about doing this film. And he said he was in a play with a guy who was Czech. And he said everything this guy said sounded incorrect and hilarious. And so he just used that accent. He also said he was up against a rogues gallery of older character actors for this role and had auditioned, and then they told him, you got to tape it again, but you got to put on all this old age makeup and put that on because we don't believe that you're old. And so he did. He had a special friend who was a special effects age makeup guy do him up to make him look a bit older. So, but yeah, he said he had a blast on it. So why did you like it? Sorry,
I just love the inversion. I mean, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey is that's another good dumb movie.
Yeah.
Even though Bill and Ted's I think is just a fun movie. The second one's good dumb.
Is Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey a better movie than Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure?
I don't think so, but I think it's pretty good.
It does have Station, the weird ass alien monster in it.
Yeah.
That's the smartest creature in the universe.
Right. And so, not to give too much of the plot away, but once Death is defeated, he winds up working as a servant, basically, for Bill and Ted as they attempt to save the universe again.
They're very charming people. You can see why, the people throughout history kind of flock to them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And even Death.
Yeah, even Death can't.
He's got a soft spot for him.
Because they're such lovable idiots.
Yeah.
You know?
This one says that Bill Sadler also played a bit role as an Englishman when we see various spots around the world when the Battle of Bands is shown. So
really?
Sadler comes back. So Death is in more than one place.
Interesting.
In this.
Interesting.
And just such a friendly kind of personification of Death in this one.
Right. And, and a lot of times with these, that's something that you see, I think, with Death when it's personified as the Grim Reaper. When you get into these comedies, it's often he's often shown as to be somebody who doesn't really love the idea of death, but it's just his job.
Yeah.
This is what he does.
Yeah.
And you see that, I think, often in comedies, and I think this is kind of plays into that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Sadler said that there's a scene, I think they're in the Home Depot or something, shopping, and a guy walks by smoking a cigarette. He says, "See you real soon." And that is his improv.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said, wouldn't it be funny? I don't know, if you have some extra film, we could do this bit. And it's one of the nicer little notes of the whole thing.
Oh, that's great.
Hilarious. Winfield.
I am reading a book called Mythos, which is all about Greek mythology. And it's written by the uber delightful Stephen Fry.
Oh, wonderful.
It is.
Lovely.
It is entirely in his tone of voice.
Yes.
He goes back and kind of retells just very classic Greek mythology stories, or goes through kind of the pantheon of all the gods and demigods and whatever. But it just reads like Stephen Fry. It reads like something out of Jeeves and Wooster, not Jeeves and Wooster, but Fry and Laurie, and he's just delightful. And I came across just a passage in it just the other night talking about Sisyphus. And Sisyphus is known as the king who no one knows what he did to be the guy that in the underworld in his afterlife that's rolling the rock up the hill, unable to ever get it to the top.
Yeah.
The story goes that after he was killed, Zeus, who was mad at him, says, "Well, okay, you can come join the pantheon of gods. You can come and live in immortality with us and be a king with us, all you got to do is roll this rock up this hill.
Oh.
And thinks that he's so smart. He's like, or you can just kind of pass on to the afterlife and you'll be, fine. Live with like, the general mass. And he's like, fuck that. I am pushing this rock up the hill. It's not that big. I can push it up the hill. So he starts to push it up and he gets almost to the top and it rolls all the way back down. And he's been doing this forever.
Yeah.
But the story of Sisyphus before he gets to his final punishment is one of hubris and one where he literally tricks death. He did something to displease Zeus. He told some people where like a river was, and Zeus was like, "You don't get to do that." And so Zeus is like, "Okay, Thanatos, which is the name of like the Grim Reaper, death. He's the person that comes to claim your soul. He's the skull-faced creature with the scythe. He comes up to get Sisyphus, and Sisyphus is kind of like, hey, what's up? Those manacles that you bind people with to take them to the other world, are they really unbreakable? And Thanatos is like, yes, of course, no one can. He's like, what about you? Can you get out of them? So he tricks Death into locking himself up in these chains, and then he escapes. Sisyphus is like, I'm out of here. See you later. And Ares, the god of war, realizes that no people are dying in his battles. And Hades in the underworld is like, no souls are coming down here. So Death has been locked up, no souls. And so Zeus has to come and basically take the manacles off of Thanatos.
He's not so much mad. He's just disappointed.
I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, just really
Your
disappointed.
choices.
But one, reading Greek mythology stuff, all of these characters are also human. They're gods, but they're all just like petty and lustful. But I love the idea that Death is someone that can be tricked. Is this persona that is just a dope.
Yeah.
Almost kind of like the one
Bogus Journey, yeah.
Bogus Journey, where he's just like, he lost to Twister and lost to Battleship and lost to Connect 4 or whatever.
Yeah.
I love the idea that Death is just this guy. It's just his job. His job is to do this thing, and there are people that are just smarter. And con artists in general are very good at just getting out of Death's grasp.
He is a servant of probably some very, very intelligent, powerful people, but he just does this gig.
He's punching his clock. He's like the wolf and the sheepdog in the Warner Brothers cartoon, punching in and punching out. But go check out this book. It is delightful.
I gotta do it. The Stephen Fry, I always think of him as Oscar Wilde. He feels like he is that guy.
Yeah.
Fred Manny, what's your last one?
All right, so when celebrity deaths happen, it affects us all in different ways.
Yes, because we are responsible for them.
Mainly, most of the time.
Yeah.
I think it's especially hard whenever it's a sudden death, maybe a violent death. And I think we can all of us of our generation can remember exactly where we were when we learned about the assassination of Buckwheat.
That's right. That's right. On SNL.
Yes. Yeah, on live television.
Yes.
I remember I watched SNL when I was a kid. I was probably like 6 or 7 at the time. And I remember this actually scaring the hell out of me a little bit. Like, it was funny.
But it had the reality.
And I went back and I rewatched. It's actually a 2-part skit that kind of played out over the course of 2 weeks. And there are some very funny punchlines in it, but it mainly plays out like the actual assassination stuff plays out very straightforward.
Yeah.
The backstory behind it is that Eddie Murphy had been playing the Buckwheat character, and it had been this breakout, huge hit character for him. The problem being that everybody kept coming up to him on the street and wanting him to do Buckwheat. Be Buckwheat, do Buckwheat, sing a song. And he goes up to Dick Ebersol, who was the executive producer at the time, and says, I'm sick of Buckwheat. I don't want to do him anymore. I want to kill him off. So Ebersol sends him off to the 2 writers that Eddie Murphy usually worked with and said, well, work with Barry Blaustein and David Sheffield. Work with them and figure something out. So they write down this 2-part thing. And the first part is literally almost like the Reagan assassination attempt. but the punch it's got Joe Piscopo as Ted Koppel, and the running punchline is that they keep showing the assassination attempt over and over and over again, an instant replay, slow-mo replay. You know, every version of how we can, because they have nothing else left to talk about.
Yeah.
That part of it was very funny. The whole idea that every time some different part of the news would break, it would be sponsored by Texon, because life goes on, and Texon is there. Like, it keeps popping up like every 20 seconds. They interview Alfalfa in the emergency room. It's Mary Gross with like the hair sticking up. I'm very confused. And,
I think it was insinuated that Alfalfa was the one that killed him, right?
No.
Oh.
No?
No. They go into the operating room so they can, as Buckwheat's being operated on, so they can show the doctor the footage of the assassination attempt. Then after Buckwheat dies, next week, they come back and it's all about the profile of the killer, John David Stutz. Because they always have three names.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's Eddie Murphy, kind of like no eyebrows and kind of this hollow look on his face. And the whole idea is they have like a psychologist talking about, well, people who kill, they kill because they want notoriety. They have this idea that, you know, if they kill someone famous, they'll become famous. And unfortunately, some irrational news people will trade on this.
Yeah.
And which immediately goes to Ted Koppel throwing to like a 5-minute long puff piece on the life of John David Stutz.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where everyone in his hometown of Lima, Ohio, says the same thing about him. He was a loner, nice kid, hard worker. Then they ask him if he killed Buckwheat. They think he killed Buckwheat. Oh yes, that's all he ever talked about. Like he was he was voted most likely to kill Buckwheat. And I just remember as a kid, like I'd be in 7 or so. This was the time when there was like the Reagan assassination attempt, and Sadat had been assassinated, and there was this rash of kind of like assassinations that had been, or attempts that had been taking place. And even though, for some whatever reason in my head, it was the way it was presented, because they show Buckwheat walking out and of 30 Rock, and you hear some go, "Mr. Wheat!" Pop, pop, pop. And he kind of gets this stunned look on his face, and he's shoved into the limo. It was a little frightening.
Yeah.
And actually, it turns out they'd actually shot a version that had squibs. And they wound up shooting a second version without the squibs, just in case. And that's the one they used, because they said the one with squibs just made it too realistic.
Wow. So
it is a really, if you go back and watch it on YouTube, Daily Motion, wherever it exists, it's interesting because, yes, it was a way to kill off this beloved character, but it really is this great critique of sort of news media.
Yeah.
And how they go about covering something like this when they have nothing to talk about for hours on end. So all they can do is re-show this footage, and how, you know, the people who do commit the assassinations often become just as famous as the people they assassinate.
Yeah. That, as a child, I remember seeing that, and it was too close to the Reagan stuff to not be scary.
It was too well done.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah. It does feel like if a president, this is not to get, I think what I took from that Buckwheat thing was the same thing you took from the presidential thing. If somebody can hurt the president, can't they hurt me?
Yeah,
they
exactly.
hurt my mom and dad too.
Exactly.
That does seem like SNL trying to reclaim its edge in a time when it was the not ready for primetime players, and the rebellion that they represented that was a carryover from the 60s had faded so much, and they were part of the establishment now.
Yeah, and they were definitely, I know, reading the Life from New York book, that was a time where Ebersol didn't really want to talk about a lot of political stuff. So this was kind of a way to shoehorn this kind of social criticism, at least, into the show.
Yeah.
At a time where it was really more about, like, you know, the Weiner family. That was like
Doug and Wendy
stuff
Weiner.
like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Okay, Winfield. Kill it.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Very nice.
Kill it.
I love the Dracula voice.
Dracula.
Can you imagine if there was just an entire country where everyone sounded exactly like Dracula?
It's called Transylvania.
No, but like for real.
For real.
For real. My last choice is Death from the Sandman comics from the late 80s, early 90s. But not actually Death, but a character that I guess I'm on a streak. Like last week, all of mine were kind of connected. This is another person that kind of evades death. So Death in the Sandman comic series is one of 7 siblings who are anthropomorphic embodiments of a certain state of mind.
Oh, okay.
They all begin with the Destiny and Dream, which is who the comic is about. Destruction, Desire, Despair, and Delirium, and the cute
And D's nuts.
and the exceptionally cute version of Death, who is just like a cute late
Manic
80s,
manic
early
pixie
manic
dream girl.
pixie dream girl.
Yeah.
Just Death, with
Yeah.
the unk and the dyed black hair and the pearl white skin. And she wears like a cute black tank top, and she's just super positive, even though she's Death.
Yeah.
Well, at some point in the storyline, Dream and Death are in England in the 1300s, 1389, and they meet someone who declares, his name is Gabling, and they meet someone who declares that death is just something that everybody goes along with. Nobody actually has to die. And so as the Endless, as they're called, they make a kind of a deal between Dream and Death. They say, okay, well, if he ever wants to die, he can die, but he won't die until then. And so Dream makes a deal with this guy
Yeah.
to meet every 100 years at the same bar. And every 100 years he comes back and he's still not died. And after the first 100 years, he's like, I've been very successful. My life has been great. I'm starting to get into printing. Comes back 100 years later and he's a little more downtrodden. He's seen his wife and child come and go, and he's kind of moved on. Another 100 years go by, and he's been like a mercenary, and the people have tried to kill him. He's been in wars all these times, but he's survived, but he still doesn't want to die. Another 100 years go by, and he's like involved in like the slave trade.
Yeah.
And he's made a ton of money being a slaver, and Dream kind of says, well, that's really awful to imprison people in that way. And another 100 years go by, and yada, yada, yada. And ultimately, it's a story about this friendship of this guy has with Dream. But ultimately, it is this embodiment of people's desires to never die, which is something that we haven't really talked about yet, where death is this thing that we all know is coming for us, and we all have fancied the thought, what happens if I could just live forever?
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that life will be awful at some point for everyone, no matter your station in life. All these billionaires that are out there trying to cut off their heads and freeze them cryogenically and to have them come back later for when technology, so they can exist in the future. This guy in this story is a person that has actually learned from his forever life. And I just find it interesting, the idea of escaping death to live forever and then learning lessons from it, which I think is what ultimately it's all about, or just life in general.
Yeah. That's just fascinating. I think that's, I don't know, I guess I think of the Anne Rice series, it's a thing where you see these vampires who are beautiful, but their life is so long that they experience so much sorrow and so much.
Or like, God, that's an interesting point too. Like when you're, depending on when you've been killed, you think of Interview with the Vampire and that little girl that lives forever, and she was made vampire at the age of 9.
Yeah.
And she's just like, I'm 300 years old now, and I'm still stuck in this body. I don't know. To live forever is like this weird thing, to evade death, and then it can't all be great.
Yeah.
Diseases would ravage your body.
Yeah.
At some point, even though if it didn't kill you, it might incapacitate you, and who knows?
A good friend of mine has a screenplay premise that is so novel, but it essentially is kind of a zombie apocalypse story. He has a screenplay that he's written, and it's the world we live in, but death has been eliminated somehow, and we're trying to find a way to get death to actually happen. So people are just walking around in this decayed state where they're just miserable.
Right.
And you might be maimed, or your brain might not be functioning, but you still can't die, and it just shows the horrible side effects of the fallible human body that's decaying and can be can deteriorate, but is not dead. So that's kind of gross. Is that it?
That is it.
That is it.
We did it.
I want to choose something. Hopkins, Jeff is going to choose something. It was inspired by your SNL choice, and that is maybe the first personification of death that I ever saw as a kid, and it was from a Saturday Night Live. I was 10 years old. This was March of 1978. Christopher Lee plays Mr. Death, and he visits Jane Curtin. He visits Jane Curtin and her daughter, more specifically Lorraine Newman, and apologizes because he had to take her dog. Mr. Death, Tippy, was on his list. But it's such a sweet, sweet sketch where you see this death is either portrayed by a skeleton, or sometimes, in his case, he was not a youngish man even back then in '78. But Christopher Lee plays this character as a very empathetic person who doesn't necessarily like this job that he does, but it is his task. So I'm going to choose that. That's in the Borglum bag to come out, and Jeff has given rebirth to the bag. Then I would like to choose Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, because I love Bill Sadler's role in that. And that was the second time Bill Sadler played Death. He played Death in a Tales from the Crypt thing called The Man Who Was Death.
Good audible there, Richard.
Yeah, Mr. Audible. And Heaven Can Wait. I get warm fuzzies when I think about that. And the Thanatos and the story behind that is something that I want to go investigate.
Thanatos sounds like some sort of like medicine. It would have a long list of side effects.
A long list of side effects, or something.
Number one list, death.
Number 2, pushing a rock up a hill for eternity.
Is that all? That's all, right?
That's 4.
That's 4. Guys, be careful out there. Going out trick-or-treating.
Oh, yeah.
Going out that bar.
What are you dressing up as tonight, Jeff?
I am Count Dracula. He sprays
generic.
He sprays Dracar on somebody on the cologne.
Nice.
What are you going to dress up as?
I am a kangaroo.
Kangaroo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What do you got?
I'm a ghost.
I'm a ghost. Okay, this has been the Mount Rushmore of Death. I, as always, have been Jeff.
I was Richard.
I'm Michael. Oh, live forever!
We did it, guys.